Hello and welcome to the first episode of Life on Planet Crouton. For the past 12 months, I, along with 32 other people associated with NASA, have been exploring and researching a new planet named Planet Crouton. I was in charge of examining a singular ecosystem on that planet, and that's what I'll be covering today. Originally, we didn't want the public to know anything about this planet yet, but once we landed back on Earth, I was fired for accidentally pushing an extremely annoying crewmate off of our ship while we were flying back, and I am in a very bitter and petty mood now. So first we're going to cover the ecosystem's climate and talk about the organisms that I found there. The ecosystem I researched had a subtropical climate. During the summer, it got pretty warm and humid, with the temperature being anywhere from 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit every day. During the winter, it was much cooler and wet, while the average daily temperature ranged anywhere from 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. But regardless of the planet's season, it rained in that ecosystem almost every single day. Now I will briefly describe the organisms that I named myself and some of their adaptations I took note of while living there. So the first animal I called the vibrid. This animal has extremely good eyesight, which allows it to spot its prey from farther distances. They also have a hooked beak and sharp talons that help them protect themselves and hunt prey. Next, there's an ecosystem I named Caro. The organism, oh my gosh. Okay, there's an organism I named Caro. The Caro has a green color to its skin, which lets it blend in with its natural environment. It has no arms or legs, so it can move through tighter spaces much easier than other animals, and it also has very flexible jaws to swallow large prey. Then there's the pygmy. This animal also has green skin to camouflage in with its surroundings. It lives both on land and in water, which is why it has webbed feet to help with swimming. They also have sticky tongues, which can extend rather quickly to catch any of its fast-moving prey. Moving on, there's the tortoise, which has a very slow metabolism, allowing it to conserve more energy. They also have long, curved claws for better grip on branches and algae-covered fur that helps them blend into their environment. The swink is another organism that has webbed feet because it lives on both land and water. All of the organism's facial features are on the top of its head, which allows it to see and breathe while almost being submerged in water. And even when they are completely submerged, they have excellent breath-holding abilities. Variolas tend to bask in sunlight to warm up their wings, which helps them with flight. They also have very long noses that help them consume nectar from an organism called the satis fleur, which is a plant. Moving on to plants, the satis fleur has colorful petals which attract pollinators like the variola to its nectar. They also have these leaves called sepals that support the petals of the flower. The next plant is called the herba, which is a type of grass. The herba has long roots to increase their water absorption, and it also grows back very quickly after being cut or burned. Then there's the rubus, which have shallow roots and waxy leaves to conserve their water. Rubuses also grow fruits called go-gos, which are similar to mangoes. Trunks tend to grow very tall off of the ground, but still have very thick anchoring roots for nutrient absorption. Their large leaves allow them to absorb as much sunlight as possible, and they grow bark for protection and insulation. And trunks also grow foods called nanners, which are similar to bananas. Lastly, there's the wiggly. The wiggly is a type of decomposer. Its thin shape lets it burrow itself into the ground. They also lack any bones, so they can move very freely. When they consume organic matter, their stomach acids break it down, and then when released from their body, processed waste can be used as nutrients for plants. As far as symbiotic relations go, I noticed a pretty cool mutualistic relationship between the tortoise and the trunk. Tortoises will eat the nanners off of trunks, but they cannot digest their seeds, so they'll regurgitate them back out on the ground. This helps spread the seeds for more trunks to grow. The relationship maintains the stability of both populations by providing tortoises with a reliable food source and encouraging the growth of more trunks. So now you know about all the species. I can classify them into their respective trophic levels of the food web and describe how energy moves from the bottom to the top. So starting at the bottom, we have the producers that carry 1,000 kilocalories, and the organisms in this level would be the herba, the satisfleur, rubus, and trunk. For the primary consumers, there's the tartus, which eats both nanners and go-go's, the leaves from the trunks and rubuses. The variola consumes nectar and sometimes the petals from the satisfleur, and the swink also eats satisfleurs as well as the herba, go-go's, rubus leaves, and trunk bark. All these organisms receive 100 kilocalories. The secondary consumers are the caro and the piccoli, which both receive 10 kilocalories. The caro eats all three of the primary consumers, while the piccoli only eats the variolas, and they also eat wigglies. The singular tertiary consumer, the vibrid, receives only 1 kilocalorie and eats the dead carcasses of any of the previously listed animals. And finally, the decomposer, the wiggly, who breaks down dead animal remains to turn them into nutrients and release them back into the soil for plants. For the planet's nutrients cycles, I was able to come up with a theory of how its carbon and nitrogen cycles seem to work. So carbon in the atmosphere in the form of CO2 can get dissolved and absorbed by water or absorbed by plants like the satisfleur or trunk through photosynthesis. Then once animals like the variola or the tartus consume these plants and water, they ingest carbon as well. To get this out of their bodies, they perform a process called cellular respiration to release the carbon back into the air or into the soil. From the soil, the carbon turns into fossil fuels, which I use myself to power a lot of my machines while living there. And after being used, the carbon is also released into this atmosphere, restarting the cycle over again. And for nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen enters the planet by precipitation. So once the rain gets absorbed by soil, bacteria called multi located in the soil combine the nitrogen with hydrogen to create ammonium. The ammonium is then combined with oxygen to create nitrites, which are converted into nitrates. And with these nitrates, plants like the herba and the satisfleur can either absorb them or they can be absorbed by a bacteria called pastor, which converts them back into atmospheric nitrogen to be released into the air. With dead animals like a dead swink, their bodies are decomposed by wigglies, and any nitrogen within their bodies is converted into ammonium, where it then enters back into the cycle again. Biodiversity is also heavily impacted by the environmental changes in the ecosystem. Severe storms, floods, and tropical cyclones are very dangerous because with enough water, speed, and strength, any of those disasters could wipe out the entire population of producers and maybe even primary consumers. Without any animals in those trophic levels, the rest of the ecosystem would have almost no chance of survival. Our space exploration for the past year has also had an effect on the environment. One of my main sources of food while there were the go-go's and nanners from rubuses and trunks. Taking too many of them ended up not leaving enough for the organisms here that eat them too, which were mainly primary consumers. So once I noticed a decrease in their population overall, I did cut back on my consumption. And that's about everything I was able to gather on my 12-month trip. This is all factual information because it's coming from me, so why wouldn't it be right? If you don't believe me, it doesn't really matter because you can't prove me wrong anyways, and I didn't really see you on that planet with me, so I don't really want to hear it. Unfortunately, there will be most likely not be another episode of this podcast because I did just release highly confidential information and I do expect to be arrested soon, but it's 100% worth it. That kid was so annoying. So I'll see you next time or you'll see me on trial, and it's definitely gonna be the second one.